Boston, they've just posted it, a 10th rebound. So Aliyah Boston is now number 1 on the all-time double-doubles list at South Carolina. But at South Carolina, they don't wait around to make an announcement or anything. They keep going. 73 double-doubles and counting for Aliyah Boston.
I just knew it. People would say, do you think she'll play her freshman year? I'm like, play? I'm like, I think she's going to be I did say, I think she's going to be an All-American her freshman year. Like, I knew the skill set that she had. I knew just the extraordinary way that she moves. I knew the way that she can, get up and down in terms of the quick muscles and block shots and rebounds. And like, no one else, I had not seen another, post players are big, post players are wide, but I had not seen another post player in years and years and years, I think probably ever, that had that kind of skill set. So it was no surprise to me. No surprise that Aliyah is where she is.
How did Aliyah Boston become the best player in college basketball? Certainly Gamecock fans are not surprised to see her amazing career reach the heights it has. But where did it all begin? On this week's edition of Gamecock Talk, we went in search of someone who could speak to the Aliyah Boston that existed prior to her arrival in Columbia. Who was her mentor before Dawn Staley? A veteran coach, highly decorated college player, and former TV analyst. Her name is Sherry Levin, and her memories of the 3 years spent molding Aliyah's game and helping guide her to the next level are certainly worth a listen. There's great pride amongst those in St. Thomas who can claim the Virgin Islands as Aliyah's home. However, the coach of Worcester Academy fondly recalls the 3 years the defending National Player of the Year spent in Massachusetts playing for her as well. And that is what we discuss on this week's edition of Gamecock Talk. Well, if you're a Gamecock women's basketball fan, you know the Aliyah Boston story pretty well by now. But certainly there is more to it than just her upbringing, coming to America. There was time spent in the Northeast. In fact, when she played her high school ball, it was at Worcester Academy, a program that dominated New England high school basketball. And her head coach then, and still the head coach at Worcester Academy, is Sherry Levin, who is with us. Coach, thanks so much for your time. We want to get more of a perspective on Aliyah, her growth, what got her to Gamecock country, and now that we see someone who is the dominant fixture in women's college basketball. And I don't think we're being too, wearing the garnet-colored glasses and saying that to see what she has become. But you had a chance to coach her for 3 years on the high school level and get her ready for college basketball and beyond. So I guess for starters, give us that starting point when you were coming back to a program you had coached previously and inheriting the program. She had already finished her freshman year. Did you know, I guess you would say, what you were getting yourself into, what you had waiting on you in that locker room?
So I did not. I had actually met Aliyah and her family. We had a 10-year reunion of our 2006 team. In a tournament that was at Worcester Academy, and Aliyah was a freshman. I was not at Worcester Academy at the time, and I remember meeting her, and I remember seeing the team play, and they were very good at that time, and thinking, wow, this is a good player. Fast forward to the end of the season, and I got the call from the athletic department that they would love to have me back. The coach that had coached Aliyah her freshman year had left. And would I be able to come back? And as time would have it, worked out perfectly. So I jumped at the chance. I love the community. Many people that I worked with previously were still there, and I was just like eager to get back. And the interesting thing is I met with the athletic director, Mr. Ed Riley, and he gave me a roster of kids who were returning. And he said, you probably want to reach out to Aliyah and her family. So immediately that was my first call. I got home and I called Cleone, and I still remember this as if it was yesterday. We spoke for about an hour and a half, and I went through everything about myself. I went through my perspective as a coach, as a person, what I would look for, what my expectations were, and just had this wonderful connection that I think was part of the fact that they then began to trust me and what I would bring to the program. I then remember I brought Aliyah and Alexis for a workout, and we said, come on, let's work out. And my first questions were, what are your hopes and dreams? Where do you want to go with this game of basketball? And she told me, and I said, great. I said, let's get at it. And, the workouts began, and I will say in a very broad sense, the 40,000 foot view, whatever it was that I was coaching, she would bring in, and then she would work on it. And I think that's one thing, and we can talk more in detail, but that was the very essence of the beginning. And I said, I watched every one of her games her freshman year. Ironically, she was not on the New England All-Star team selection her freshman year, which is so surprising to me, knowing what she could do. And I said to her, if you follow this, then I think you can check off those boxes and be one of the greatest players because you have that natural gifts. And it was the first thing we talked about, demanding the ball. And then how do you do that? And then the progression. So clearly it was the first step. I walked out of that gym beaming like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a great ride.
Now, you said you asked what she wanted out of the game, and she told you. What did she tell you? Do you remember much in the way of specifics about it?
I remember very much. There were three things. She wanted to play at the highest level of Division I. She wanted to play professional. And then she wants to go into and continue to, earn a great living within the game of basketball. And knowing that, knowing that those were her hopes and dreams, I was not going to accept what she would give me in those moments. And I can remember so many different games or plays where, sometimes at your level, different high school games, and we have a lot of talent, Division I talent that we compete against every game. But every now and then, she'd be up against a 5'10" post, right? And she'd be able to get the rebound by just using her height. And I would say to her, okay, but what you really need to do is get around and get position. And, if you're going to block a shot, you can't always just use your left. You have to use your right on the other side. Otherwise it'd be a foul. So I always coached her knowing what she would become as opposed to what she was in that moment. And she was very receptive to any of that.
You bring me to a subject that I'm always curious about. When you play at a private school, and the question is, what is the competition level like? How is the program able to set up a schedule to meet the, demands of what her expectations are? Was that already in place with your program? Or was that something you had to maybe upgrade somewhat once you got to see her and what her skill set looked like?
We as a school, we compete in the girls basketball program in the highest level, which is class AA. So I would say the majority of teams in the AA have multiple players playing at Division I. Okay. There's a couple of kids at UConn, Villanova, and all different conferences, Marquette. So in that sense, you pick that year. We played against a team that had a post player, 6'3" girl going to Syracuse. And, at the time, Aliyah was, sophomore and then junior, and then she graduated. And I would just, I would pose the challenge. Aliyah loves a challenge, and she's also very much a perfectionist in the sense that when we would do a drill, say best out of 10, and she'd miss her first. No, I gotta start on that first. And I would learn this about her, and I would be able to challenge her in ways that once you know how a player really thinks and then you can push them in a sense that if she wants to beat that record because she's very competitive, then I'm going to pose. I'm like, my guard in 2006 got 32. You just got 30. Do you think you get 32? Oh yeah. Let me do it again, coach. So knowing that spirit with her, we did play a lot of great talent. And fortunately for us, with not only Aliyah but the people surrounding her, it was a great journey.
And this is a big possession for Kentucky's defense, and Aliyah Boston making it look easy to put the dagger on Kentucky.
So, when I think of Aliyah, I think of someone who is competitive, but not, you don't look at her and think, okay, she's one of those fire in the eyes kind of, the spirit is sometimes not as visible. But you worked with her daily. And I just think sometimes those of us who see her off the court and see what just a wonderful person she is, it can kind of, you let that impact your thinking of her on the court. Did she have that level of competitiveness and aggressiveness initially, or was that something you had to pull out of her? What was that like?
You think about growth, right? And when she's on the younger side. And so initially, even her sophomore year, I think she was still 15, right? When you think of the maturity of a 15-year-old. And I had said our first game, and we ran an offense that went through Aliyah, right? I said everybody, I said, here's our offense. It's a post-oriented offense. The way that the team will defend Aliyah will allow everybody else open threes, right? And so first game, she had 32. And they didn't double. I'm like, this is great, right? Second game, she had 35. Like, this is nice, right? Third game, 31. By the fourth game, and the rest of her career, it was a double, it was a front, it sometimes was a triple. So she had to learn that mental toughness, right? She had to learn the ability of, you know what, I would tell her all the time, and I would look up, I would say, Aliyah, you are the best player in the court. So what does that mean, right? Like that's can be heavy weight for a young player who is continuing to grow, but she would accept that challenge. Not every game was met with roses. But for the most part, it was, she knew she had a battle. And when there was some foul trouble, or when she was, upset about something, she was able to get over that. And I think I credit that a lot with her faith. I credit that a lot with, her parents and the way that they have raised her, and the positive people that she has had around her to support her.
So you get to the point where it's very obvious what a talent she is very early on, and the recruiting process is coming, and you are sitting there smack dab in the backyard of Gino and the Huskies and their program that at that point in time was, as big as there was. And to this day, still quite much that. What was the process like? What do you remember about the recruiting process? Who was in earliest? How did South Carolina become a factor, and so forth from there?
It was quite a process, and at times it was very daunting for again, a young player. And I can remember having our open gyms in the fall, which all the prep schools will have, and I would have a sideline, and I put out every chair, and I'd look at my list who said they were coming, and you would have all the top 25 of women's basketball coaches in the gym. And I used to marvel at the fact they're coming to watch us play pickup, essentially, right? And they're really coming to have Aliyah see them, as opposed to they know what Aliyah can do, right? They watch her in the summer, they watch her USA basketball. That wasn't the question. I think it was very telling when Aliyah once said to me that this is just a very difficult process because she's making a lot of wonderful connections and building these really nice relationships, but only one she's gonna say yes to one. So I think near the end, she had narrowed it down, very academic focused as well. So that was very important to her. And I think it was about building relationships. And I think obviously Don and the staff and the players for Aliyah was just one of those visits, and she connected in a way that I think she knew in her heart that South Carolina was the place for her. And I don't know if you know the story of when she made the announcement. So I'll just tell you a little bit if you
right
know,
ahead.
some of your viewers may not.
That's right.
But, we had planned a trip to St. Thomas as a service trip during the week of Thanksgiving. We are off to help after the year that they had the hurricane. So we had planned this beautiful week of not only seeing St. Thomas and seeing, Aliyah's home, but we had planned a clinic. We had planned to feed the homeless on Thanksgiving, and we had planned to see the ecosystem in any way that we could help with that. So That was planned a year before we realized that we would be down there to play in a tournament the week that Aliyah could make the announcement. So here we are as the Paradise Jam, right? So here we are as a team. I could not, it gives me goosebumps right now thinking about the fact that Aliyah got to reveal, take off the shirt and show where she was going to go, South Carolina, in front of not only her friends, her family got to be there, her team, we were there, but the country. And they broadcast it live in St. Thomas. So it was just, you could not have scripted that better. And it was a year before that we had planned the trip. And then we, saw the tournament, but it was just an extraordinary time that we all will certainly remember, and the country and everybody, Aliyah's family treated us. I still remember that Thanksgiving meal, by the way. Pretty amazing. And it was just such a memorable trip.
Well, hopefully you took credit for the visionary ability to have this all play out exactly the way anyone would have dreamed for.
Right.
When you talk about that, her home, she's not just a young lady who had so much, as you just mentioned. Think about that for most of our viewers. Think about having a lineup of college coaches watching your every move in a practice setting and what that pressure is like. And I don't know how many people really stop and think about that part of the process. But the risk for her is being so far away from home. Did you detect that at times? The challenges that went with, even if her family was there with her in the Northeast, you're still missing home, I would imagine.
Absolutely. And she had her aunt and her cousin, Janaire, and I would Cleone and I and Algie, we would talk often, and I was able to, as much as I loved it, I used to announce women's basketball games. So a lot of these coaches I would know from years of, either they've been at the same place or, I used to announce all the UConn games. So I knew, Gino and Chris, and I was the one who was then able to take Aliyah to a lot of the, the games and the trips and, meet with the coaches when they came to visit. And, so being that I like to say seasoned, and having that experience of more of a mature coach, if you will, I think that was that helped because I was able to help navigate it, and I was able to kind of shield some of the extra pressures, and knowing, because of my experience and because of going through it and knowing a lot of these coaches, help Aliyah through that kind of process of understanding the growth period. I can think of, we were driving once, and so her sophomore year, she could have clearly been, a captain on our team. And I remember saying to her, I want this year, it was my first year, and it was her first year with me. I said, I don't want you to be the captain right now. I want that to come. I want you to focus on your growth and you, and understanding, you're still 15, right? I don't want you to be responsible for leading others yet. Kind of soak in what it means to identify what your strengths and your weaknesses and your goals and your dreams are. She then, of course, was a captain her junior, senior year, and you could see the maturity process. I will say that her junior year, this is one of my favorite memories. Didn't start out that way, but we're playing the New England championship game against a very talented team who had 5 or 6, Division I players as well. And early on, Aliyah got in foul trouble. And about 11 and a half minutes is when we played a 16-minute halves. About 11 and a half minutes to go in the game, second half, Aliyah got her 4th foul. And I took her out. And, she sat down and visibly, a little teary and, as anybody would be. And I walked over and I said, well, we have 2 choices. I said, I can put you in and you can play smart and disciplined and tenacious and tough and stay in as long as you can, hopefully for the rest of the game. Or I can sit you and we're going to fall far behind. So I said, you got to gather, you got to, you can do this. I know you can do it. And so, all right. And we put her back in and we ended up winning the championship, and she ended up staying on the court. And, it's that kind of, that kind of growth. That was her junior year. And then her senior year, we won back to back against Tabor as well. So in that sense, that little bit of, she showed her emotion as anybody would, but she was able to gather, and then she was able to think it, and then she was able to say, okay, I'm like, you can't block every shot now, you can't go over the back for a rebound, you got to move your feet. I find when you have foul trouble, you should be a better defender, because now all of a sudden you're playing much more disciplined. You don't have that luxury of slipping up a little bit. You really have to think the game. So that's like one of my favorite stories, because it just shows what she was capable of doing. People were like, you're putting her back with 4 fouls. My friends who are coaches, afterwards were like, what are you doing? I'm like, I know my team. I know the opponents. I knew what we had to do. We were either going to get really far behind and then try to catch up, or Aliyah's just going to go out and do the best we can. And she did, and she led us to a championship.
Speaking of her growth, I think about the progress just in terms of the team outcome for the season for 3 years at South Carolina. Year one, that freshman group comes in, they're paired up with a couple of outstanding seniors, so they don't have to worry about, once again, just what you're describing. We don't need any leadership from you. Just go play. We've got the leadership here already. A team that everyone, I doubt that there's anyone watching this that doesn't agree with me, was destined to win the national championship. There was as little doubt about that as I think you could possibly dream up in a 64-team field. COVID takes that opportunity away from them.
Yep.
The next year, she inherits then more of the leadership. Those 2 seniors are gone, and they have a great season. They come up just short at the end. And of course, we'll all always remember the tears that happened immediately for her when that loss took place.
I cried along with her.
I don't doubt that. And then to come back last year and have the run get them eventually where we all thought they would end up. Pretty amazing 3-year experience, but the way that it worked its way up step by step, it's rarely is there such a straight line, almost the pathway, that it definitely followed that for her. And it's amazing to think that she still has another March run with all that she's already accomplished and experienced.
Absolutely. And, she's such a humble kid. I mean, she just, and again, I credit, her family, her mom and dad and her extended family and Dawn. I often joke with Dawn. I got to announce Dawn's games when she was at Virginia, and she was a player of very few words in an interview at the end of a game. And now, we laugh because, now she's like one of the best interviews there is. So, to have Aliyah surrounded by such strong, independent people, but also who have kept her grounded and have kept her humble. She could not be as great a role model as there is. And I remember sitting in one of our gyms where Dawn had come up to watch an open gym. And I had said, I think her freshman year, this is going into Aliyah's senior year, so she hadn't made a decision yet. I said, I think her freshman year in college is going to be a little easier because she's not going to face double. She's not going to face triple. It's going to be like, one-on-one, she'll be able to play. And, Dawn sort of chuckled and she says, well, I hope she'll be doubled. And, I think back to that and I'm thinking it probably took, I remember watching like every game on the SEC network and, of her freshman year, probably took to just about like the 3rd or 4th game. And then all of a sudden there was that double team. And I went, you know what, Dawn was right. It didn't take long for that to happen. You just can't, with all of what she has developed. And I go back to that idea of the tool bag, right? Like if they take away the drop step, you got the up and under. If they take away the post moves, you got the mid range. If you take away that, you got a step back 3. She has so many different options now. She brings the ball up the court, and if you don't have somebody able to stop her or 2 people, she'll kick it to an open teammate, and it's just really, really difficult for teams. So she really, I think, drives the whole success. Obviously, they have an amazing team and wonderful players surrounding her because you have to. Basketball is a team sport, but I think if you drop the pin, Aliyah is what everybody circles around.
So often, Sherry, in sports, whether it's playing or coaching, people talk about, boy, you do not want to have to follow a legend. And Asia Wilson has a statue outside the arena. Right. That's not common. And she's a hometown girl. and she won the first national championship.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Do you think there was ever a point in time where Aliyah had to stop and think about being that obvious comparison, or not necessarily the case, since she was not coming from, this community or even really the Southeast?
I think that's another great question, but I think Aliyah is very confident in who she is. And I think she'd probably be the first one to say, I'm not making any comparisons. I am my own person. I am my own player. And she will celebrate Asia Wilson as she will celebrate all her teammates. She's very quick to deflect the praise. I remember when I was fortunate she was a McDonald's All-American, obviously her senior year. And when I was able to, to hand her that jersey on senior day, and, tears are flowing. And the first thing she's like, no, it's all my teammates. So I think she just has that ability to be who she is, which is a wonderful, wonderful person. And basketball player is something that she does. But I think because, again, I'll go back to her upbringing and her faith, that she is grounded to knowing this is who I am. And I can celebrate my teammates and those who came before me. And I think she really values, and you look at what Dawn did in her playing career, her coaching career. I also was able to announce some games when she was at Temple. So, I've seen, Dawn really take over and become one of the all-time leading, coaches and teachers, and knowing that the relationships that you will forge as a player, as I did with my coach, Togo, and as Dawn will do with all her players, and as I do with my current players at Worcester Academy and those who came before them. That's what the game's about. And if you can help them get to where they want to do with their dreams and goals, as Aliyah will do, please God, and she will, do it because she has, all these wonderful people around her and a strong faith and family.
Well, it's hard to imagine what else she has left to achieve, but she certainly still seems focused and motivated on finishing her final season of college basketball, and then looking ahead to a professional future. Do you two talk at all now about what's next, or how do you keep your eyes on the prize, so to speak? What your next goal is?
Yeah. So when I text, I usually, I'm texting, I talk with Cleone and I'll text Aliyah. She's a busy lady. So, I'll get a thank you. Thanks, coach, So no, I respect her time and her energy. And I send her all the congratulations. And so that she knows and responds to. I do think, it's funny because when back in the day when I would say, you do this WNBA, I would say, when you're in the WNBA, can you get me a front row ticket? And she'd smile. She'd go, oh, and I'd say, all right, well, thanks, So having that as one of her goals, I would always, say, hey, you can get away with this now. But if that's where you want to go, you got to do it differently. You got to do this. You got to add that. So I gratefully handed Aliyah and her game off to Dawn and staff. I love to say that we did create an AB move that I love to see her when she does it. Aliyah Boston, the AB move. I see a lot of the things. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember working that drill. I remember, doing that. And I take a lot of personal pride and so much pride in her. And no doubt, like that's what when I send her a text and I'm like, no doubt that you were going to do this and that, because I just knew it. I just, people would say, do you think she'll play her freshman year? I'm like, play. I'm like, I think she's going to be I did say, I think she's going to be an All-American her freshman year. Like, I knew the skill set that she had. I knew just the extraordinary way that she moves. I knew the way that she can, get up and down. In terms of the quick muscles and block shots and rebounds. And like no one else, I had not seen another. Post players are big, post players are wide, but I had not seen another post player in years and years and years, I think probably ever, that had that kind of skill set. So it was no surprise to me. No surprise that Aliyah is where she is.
Coach, we appreciate your time so much. Great catching up and hearing your perspective, having seen her growth from all the way back when she was 15 years old.
Yep.
It's pretty amazing to think that she is winding down her college career, but it has been an amazing run. And I know you have been fortunate enough to be able to keep up with it while still coaching your squad. And as before we go, congratulations. I know you just had your jersey retired at Holy Cross. And so now where there is a Bob Cousy jersey hanging or a Tom Heinsohn jersey hanging, there is also a Sherry Levin jersey hanging. That's pretty special.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's again, I could keep going on, but I know you have a time limit. It was a pleasure talking with you about Aliyah, and I just keep looking forward to the next game, and then one game at a time until her college is over, and then on to the next.